Thank you so very much for joining us once again for another episode, another podcast here at Region 19. We strive to engage you with some interesting topics that are relevant to our educators, that are relevant to our parents. And so in this particular segment, I am very honored and pleased to have an author and an illustrator. And I'm going to go ahead and ask them to introduce themselves to you.
Hi, I'm Meagan O'Toole Pitts, the author.
I'm Ashton Kaleigh, the illustrator.
Thank you very much. And so what did they write and what they draw about, right? So, Carmelita is a very interesting book that really provides us with some very important historical context that is based here in El Paso. And so I think it is a very important story that tells us, about the events that happened around that time, events that perhaps may even be relevant today, right? And so I think there's a lot of relevance here that will be of great interest to teachers. If you're engaged with history, teaching language arts, Mexican-American studies, this book, Carmelita, is definitely something that you might want to consider looking into. Myself, I started my career as an educator, as a teacher of history. So I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And as I taught history, it was something that has always been interesting to me from, when I was a young person. And a lot of that had to do with a teacher that I experienced in 7th grade. That teacher, Miss Karen Young, in Van Horn, Texas, really compelled me in terms of growing my interest in terms of history. And she presented in such a way that it was engaging. It definitely became one of my callings that drove me to become a teacher. Later on, I became a bilingual teacher. And so when I see this book, and it's written in both English and in Spanish, that is another, key way of engaging a larger audience, an audience, that is very near and dear to our heart here in our borderland community, because Spanish and English are so interwoven, that sometimes we code switch in both languages. We do that translanguaging, donde estamos hablando en inglés y de repente we switch over to English, right? And so, starting with you, Meagan, tell us what inspired you to write about Carmelita.
So I discovered the story of Carmelita in the 1917 bath riots in 2019 when I read David Dorado Romo's book, Ringside Seat to a Revolution. It's like a more or less like a collegiate textbook. It's very large. It's like 350 pages, somewhere around 300 pages. And just a small portion of that, about one page, is dedicated to the 1917 bath riots and Carmelita Torres. But that was enough to spark my interest. I was stunned. I was stunned that these were true events that I was not made aware of until I was already in my 30s. And I grew up here, you know what I mean? This happened in our backyard. And I was stunned and outraged, honestly, that it was a piece of history that had been buried for so long. I've talked to teachers and even collegiate professors who told me they had no idea. So it's a generational thing. Like for generations, it's been buried so that it's not that the teachers are keeping it from us, it's that the teachers were not even taught about these events.
I myself was not taught about these events when I was a student. An interesting anecdote is that my father, who was a bracero, coming to Mexico, to the United States from Mexico, he came in the 1950s, and one of the things that he shared was the experience of being sprayed, deliced, right? And when he told me that, I was shocked, and actually, I honestly didn't believe him. I thought, no, that can't happen. That's not a possibility. It wasn't until later when I was at UT El Paso, I took a Mexican-American history course, and it was there, that I did get exposed to a lot of truths that my father told me about when I was a kid. But
And he's like, I told you.
yeah, exactly. So in college, there's a doctoral, professor telling me about things that my father, who only had 6 years of education.
But it's because he lived them.
Exactly. So the power of the lived experience here in the borderland, I think there's so much for us to learn even more about. So as you think about the story and what it means to you as an author, what are some key reflections that you have to share with teachers in terms of how do we inspire our students? How do we inspire them to become writers? Because they have so much to say. They have their own life experiences. They have their own traditional experiences from their own families. And we live in a bicultural community.
Yeah.
So can you speak to that a little bit?
I think if I can write, then anybody can most definitely write and publish. I have learning disabilities, so I was in special education classes when I was in grade school. And so reading and writing was difficult for me. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's impossible.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And it's just about putting yourself out there. The scariest thing is just your own insecurity, to be honest. Like, can I do this? Are people going to be receptive? Is it going to work? Am I going to mess it up? You just have to put all those things to the side, and maybe you will mess up. Maybe you'll have an error in the book, but it's all about learning, and that's how I actually learned, by doing. Like, I could not have read a book about publishing and then published. That's just not how I learn. I have to do it.
Yeah.
And I think students could probably relate to that too. There's lots of different learning styles, and that's one of them. Just learn by doing.
I think one of the things that you just alluded to is that productive struggle. The only way that we can learn is if we're actually struggling through something that we don't understand. And a lot of things in our classrooms, I know as a student, when I felt insecure about my language, about, what I knew and didn't know, it stopped me from asking questions. It stopped me from participating. And so I think it's very important, a key thing for us as teachers to remember is that, our kids, all our kids, bring great background knowledge, great background experiences that we just need to connect with. Finding a way to really value and honor their journey as a learner. And also students, I think we need to be more intentional with the way that we communicate with our students. And I love the way that you put it in terms of, the only way for me to learn was to actually do it. How do we help our students develop that courage, right? And I think as teachers, it is very important for us to keep that in mind because there are some shy students. I was very shy, by the way. I was the one that I had a fear of public speaking. Now I'm speaking in front of an audience of 200, right? But it's a journey. And I think it's important for us to verbalize that with our kids, our students, to let them know, hey, you know what? It's okay to be imperfect. We are all a work in progress, right? But then also how we say it as teachers makes a big difference.
So I went to journalism school, and there's a journalistic saying that stuck with me, and I take it with me everywhere, is I don't want it perfect, I want it Tuesday. And that's a saying in journalism, meaning don't get hung up on every little mistake you think you might be making. Just write it, complete it, and whatever mistakes can be edited later. Don't get hung up like, oh, I can't even turn it in, because it's not ready. No, turn it in, flesh it out and publish it. And then if there's mistakes, and you learn from it.
That's a great insight in terms of the editing process. When we submit something that is imperfect, it's okay. Because, you have colleagues, that will look at it. In class, students have each other, other classmates. They also have the teacher. And let's talk about this writing. How can we make it better? And it's okay that it is not a perfect paper. But, you did it. You submitted it. Now let's go ahead and move forward and make it a little bit better, right? So it's a work in progress for all of us.
How did you have the confidence to start doing your art?
I was also very, very shy. So I think that was my way of communicating as well. I took to it real early. That was what I was known for, not talking or doing and everything else, but drawing. And it is hard, putting it out there, especially in a more professional sense. I went to school for art, but I did not actually really pursue it professionally until much later. I did a lot of retail work, managing stores, something. But I was always doing the art on the side. I just couldn't quit it, and despite being confident, just put it out anyways. And it's the same way. Iteration is key. Editing and fine tuning. That's the only way to make any quality work, I think, because it's very rare that you produce something ready to go out the door. Take the work.
Yeah, those visuals that you develop with your artistic creativity, they themselves tell a story. It just gives us a little bit more connection to the main character. It gives us those connections to the historical time period. And they're very vivid. That's one of the things that even before I dove into the content and I just took a look at the cover of the book, that already told me about, whoa, this is going to be an engaging story that I'm about to read. Why did you choose to make this in both English and Spanish?
Because I actually want children both in El Paso and Juarez to know about her, know about these events, and grow up looking up to her and having her as a hero. Yes.
Definitely, we are one community in El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. So definitely it's a story that's relevant to both.
And the story is an El Paso Juarez story because Carmelita was from Juarez and she was encountering this mistreatment in El Paso.
And she spoke up.
Yeah, that's the truly remarkable part about her. She was only 17 years old. And what I find really remarkable is that, especially as women, it's hard to say no. I think society teaches us to be polite a lot. And so it's hard to say no, especially to an authority figure like a police officer or an immigration officer. And she had the fortitude to say no.
Yes.
Even as a woman, as a young woman, to an authority figure. And that just blew my mind. I gave me goosebumps right now just talking about it. Because that's remarkable. And I could only wish or hope to be that brave at her age in those circumstances. I don't know that I would have been. And that's why I think she is so remarkable.
She is a very remarkable woman, a very strong young lady who managed to muster the courage to speak up under extraordinary circumstances. And it's something that I'm sure will connect with a lot of our students as well. Sometimes our students do experience, moments, when there's bullying taking place. And it's not about, just silencing yourself or staying silent about what you see, but rather, let's speak up.
Absolutely.
Together, we can make a difference in speaking up whenever we see injustice taking place. So going back to the illustrations, was there any experiences that you had in grade school, 1st through 12th grade, that gave you that avenue to develop your artistic skills? What were some of those experiences that maybe led to where you are today?
So growing up, my mom had told me she was an artist as well, and she's passed away, but she was a big inspiration to me in that sense. She told me really early on that you're a professional artist once you sell your work. And in grade school, you do a lot of projects where you have to illustrate things. And the first time I remember being paid that was not family member was for a books writing thing. We had little blank books that we had to illustrate and write a story. And I had classmates actually pay me like a quarter drawing. So that was very inspiring to keep going. And I always sold after that, I guess. Yeah. Very cheap. It's like little kid stuff, but it really kept me going and thinking maybe I could continue doing it. And I had a lot of iterations of my dreams where early on, I wanted to work for Disney animation and then comic books and all sorts of different avenues, but it was always art-based.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a way to communicate. And when words fail me, illustration is what I lean on.
1,000 words.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? I think that's so powerful for us as teachers to be reflecting about, because we do have a lot of students that learn in different ways. They, a lot of them are visual learners. And in fact, that's one of the things that attracted me to history was the National Geographic magazines and the pictures and the captions, because I struggled to read. I was a second language learner and, struggling to learn English. But, the pictures said a lot of things. And then, of course, art, the art that you have created here to tell a story, that aligns so beautifully with the content that you wrote. I think those are very important skills that many of our students have. But a lot of times they don't hear that, from us as teachers, because we're so pressured to the testing, the scores, you got to get this score and that kind of thing. But there's other things that can support us in terms of reaching those high scores. And part of it is finding what is it that makes that student engage. Some of it is going to be that art. And then collaborating with a great writer, right? And together, leading to a publication. That publishing process is something that students can experience even in grade school, right? Where their work gets displayed, right? And there's recognition that happens. As you were writing about Carmelita, what are some of the thoughts, the writing process, I guess, that you engaged in order to develop this character into, she is already a strong character. The history tells us that. But how did you study this young lady to portray her and to give her that vivid, presence in your writing?
So I don't know if we were made aware, but before this, I had already done my research because I wrote and produced a radio play.
Okay.
That's a 45-minute radio play. It's on Spotify. It's both, there's an English version and a Spanish version. And it's a much more detailed, more like adult content. Not that it's R-rated or anything. It's probably more like PG, but it's just more fleshed out and more to the history. This is a little bit diluted just because it is for children. It is for a 5th grade reading level. And I just wanted to get kind of one or two things across. The biggest thing I wanted to get across is that when something, the children reading this, the last page, it says, when something makes you uncomfortable, anything, say something about it. Like, it's okay to stand up for yourself. And that's kind of what I wanted to communicate to the kids with the book. More so than the horror of the events, but more so that she had the right to stand up for herself, and I'm glad she did stand up for herself like she did.
Yes. You just heard here in teachers' terms, the author's purpose, right? When we talk about author's purpose, you just described so greatly in terms of, what was your purpose, your intention with telling this story. And there's so much, that goes into that process, to tell a good story. And then, having the illustrations also provide that additional visual, so that it motivates the reader to wow, I see this great picture.
She also illustrated the work for the 45-minute radio play that's on Spotify.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a cover.
So another
kind of looks like an album cover.
Okay. So a great resource, the teacher should be aware of is, first of all, this is for 5th grade audience.
Yeah, the radio play could be for high school.
There you go. Mm-hmm. And so we have theater, right? Mm-hmm. We have theater arts, the fine arts, journalism, and of course we have history and the English language arts in high school. There's all kinds of connections, where teachers could look up that resource on Spotify. in order to add an enhancement to, the topic. I mean, there's so many topics that could be addressed here, such as bullying, immigration, border relationships. There's,
also assault. Assault is covered in the radio play, but not in the book. I don't know if you're familiar, but the women who were being deloused complained that immigration officers were taking photos of them nude and putting those photos up in saloon bars in El Paso for their entertainment. They made this complaint, but authority figures did not listen to them, didn't do anything about it. And so that's the other meaning behind, like, when you feel that something's not right, it's okay to say that it's not right and that you don't want to participate.
So the power of speaking up, the voice of a young lady, really speaking up to an audience of men, really, because it was men in power, right?
Yeah.
And so it's important to recognize that that can be another part of the conversation is, that each one of us, no matter how powerless we may seem to be or, what we perceive ourselves to be, right, that we do have a voice. And through that voice, we speak up and we can make a difference in our own lives, but also in the lives of others as we speak up. So as we continue to think about Carmelita, what are some final thoughts or final reflections that you might have, as an illustrator and as an author in terms of key reflections that our audience of teachers should consider in terms of, how do we motivate, how do we inspire our kids to be illustrators, to be writers? What are some things that teachers should keep in mind?
Well, literally just that, just telling them that. Like, as you were talking, I was thinking about an elementary school teacher I had, a special education teacher who, even though I had difficulties reading and writing, she saw that I had an ability to write, even though it took me longer, and that I had a passion for it, too, because when I was 5 years old and I learned to write, I told my whole family that's what I'm going to do, because to me it was like magic. That you could communicate something without opening your mouth, without speaking, and that it could always be there, and that it'll be there after you're dead. I was like, that's magic. That's pure magic. And so I really attached to that art form. And then I had a teacher, actually it was middle school. She told my mother, make sure she writes a book before she finishes high school. This is many years after high school. But just the fact that she felt that I was capable of writing a book at like 13 years old meant a lot. And those kind of comments mean a lot to kids. It stays with them well into adulthood.
So definitely the power of the parents' voice, their consejos to the kids, right? Inspiring them to be writers. And then teachers in partnership with parents. Parents know their kids best. And so what is it that parents can tell us about their kid that makes them special, that makes them the person with great potential that they have? I think those conversations are important, for teachers to have with parents. So what reflections might you share with teachers in terms of the work that you do as an illustrator?
I kind of just want to come back around and reiterate the importance of like the editing and reiteration process, because we get so caught up on that perfectionism that we don't try, or we think that we're not good enough to continue or pursue a career in any given path, whether it be illustration or not. And that's certainly where I got hung up. And I think that falsely, I believed at that time when I was in school, I wasn't good enough then to pursue, but it's a journey. You're never arrived. It's always working hard to improve yourself and get better. And how important it is not to compare yourself to your peers, and more so to your yesterday you, so that you can keep going and improve upon yourself.
Yeah.
Because everyone's different and everyone has value, and can offer something in a different way that I think is worth exploring and pursuing. And
the yesterday us was a different version of ourselves, and now look at us and what we're doing today, right? Making an impact in our community, making an impact in our own families, inspiring others, hopefully, in terms of, uncovering their voice. Our students have so much potential. There's so much about them in terms of what they bring to the table. And we need to find ways to really nurture their voice so that they become leaders, are able to speak for themselves, are able to face the struggle, and to be okay with, this isn't perfect, but it's good enough as I learn, recognizing that I'm in a certain part of a continuum on my way to becoming a better version of ourselves, right? So thank you so much for visiting with us today. Thank you for sharing your insights. I think that our audience of teachers, this is very beneficial. It makes me think as a teacher of the opportunities I missed when I was in the classroom to really bring more pathways, open up more avenues for students that were silent, and the path of illustration, because illustration speaks 1,000 words. And that can be the first step to, I want to tell a story in writing as well. And so finding that way to inspire kids, motivate them. Again, thanks again for joining us. And thank you so much for spending a little time with us today as we dove into this key topic. And I hope that this was helpful in rethinking some of our practices, but then also affirming some of the practices that we are engaged in. Because there's some great teaching that is going on in our classrooms every single day. And so thank you so much for the work that you are doing to really uplift the trajectory of our students in life and academics and everything else that comes with it. So thank you for the hard work that you do, and we'll see you next time